right in. Um, President Biden's State of the Union was focused heavily on what he called a unity agenda, but it also generated some criticism from progressives on specific issues, including voting rights, policing, uh, climate change, go down the list. I'm curious, given that, what your all's overall view of the speech and the State of the Union more broadly is from a progressive perspective. And Cliff, I'll start with you because you tweeted after the address that if you had to title your summary, it'd be the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm curious to hear how you would categorize each of those things.
Yeah, thank you, Travis, and thank you, Daria and Fenton team for pulling this together, and to this great panel, many of whom I've been pleased to be on calls with and out in these streets with. But to get to the question, yeah, I said the good, the bad, and ugly. I said the good partially just in the spirit of trying to give constructive criticism, trying to start with the positive. And I will say this, that in a time when we know that there have been a lot of criticisms of the Biden administration saying that he's been too far to the left, too progressive, too much trying to be like FDR, which seems a tad out of place, but that it was good to see that he didn't completely run away from some progressive policies, that he called out corporations, he called out the tax break, he called them out for raising their prices and not paying fair wages. So that was the good. But let me get to the bad, which was, and many people have talked about this. And from our organization, Black Voters Matter, from our perspective, he gave not enough attention to the issue of voting rights. He did a little bit better than what he did in his speech last year, where he literally saved it for the very end, and it only got 2 sentences. I think it may have gotten 6 sentences in this speech, and that simply wasn't enough. And it sends a message that he's just really not that serious about trying to get legislation passed or about trying to do anything at the executive level to deal with voting rights. And in some ways it was a step backwards, because at least a couple of months ago in a speech that he gave in Georgia, he explicitly called for modifying the filibuster in order to pass voting rights. In the speech, in the State of the Union speech this week, he called for the passage of the bills, but the elephant in the room was, how are you going to get it passed? He could have had a moment where he could have looked to his left to look at the Republicans and Joe Manchin, who was sitting with the Republicans, and said, I want this passed, and I need you to modify the filibuster in order to get that done. But by not mentioning the filibuster at all, that actually represents a step backwards from where he was when he gave his Georgia speech. And then the final thing I'll say is this, just in general, on a wider issue of racial justice and racial equity, there was no discussion of that, from a president who said that he would make race equity a linchpin of his administration. He didn't mention it. I don't think he said race or even the word Black once, even when he was talking about the first Black woman potential Supreme Court justice who he nominated. If you look at the transcript of the speech, he doesn't use the word anywhere in the speech. And to a certain extent, his speech represents almost like the attacks on critical race theory, an attempt to just erase race from the discussion. All of those issues were important issues, but they all have a race equity component. If we don't speak squarely to that, then we run the risk of not letting those who are most marginalized benefit from some of the policies that he was talking about.